Slumber Party Massacre 2, 1987. This sequel throws out the standard slasher rulebook and replaces it with dream logic, rock music, and one of the strangest killers of the 80s. Instead of a masked stalker, the threat here shows up in leather, sings his lines, and carries a guitar fitted with a spinning drill bit. The story follows Courtney, the younger sister of the first film's survivor. She is dealing with lingering trauma and violent nightmares. When she heads to a condo with her friends for a band rehearsal getaway, those nightmares stop feeling imaginary. A rockabilly-style killer begins appearing, performing musical taunts, and attacking with the guitar drill as fantasy and reality start to blur. The villain is played by Atanas Illich, whose performance leans fully into the musical side of the concept, mixing stage presence with slasher menace. Crystal Bernard anchors the film as Courtney and plays the emotional angle straight, which helps balance the wild tone. The friend group feels believable as a small band circle, which gives the chaos more weight when things turn dangerous. Director Deborah Brock steers the movie towards surreal horror instead of repeating the first film's simpler formula. Musical numbers interrupt the tension on purpose, and the staging often feels like a nightmare music video. The prop guitar weapon is a practical build and became the movie's signature image. Effects are practical and stylized, focusing on drill attacks and exaggerated dream visuals rather than realism. It is a bold left turn for a franchise sequel. Not traditionally scary, but memorable and offbeat, with a style that pushed it straight into cult status. For viewers who like their slashers mixed with music and strange imagery, this one stands alone. The Initiation, 1984. For Kelly Fairchild, college life takes a dangerous turn when she pledges a sorority. The initiation ritual seems simple enough. Sneak into her family's department store after hours with her fellow pledges. But what begins as a prank-filled night of bonding soon twists into terror, as a killer stalks the girls through the mannequins, escalators, and shadowy aisles of the store. At the same time, Kelly struggles with recurring nightmares and buried memories that may hold the key to the bloodshed. Directed by Larry Stewart, The Initiation mixes the glossy atmosphere of a campus slasher with the suspense of a psychological mystery. Daphne Zuniga, in her feature film debut before Spaceballs and Melrose Place, delivers a layered performance as Kelly, while veteran actress Vera Miles, forever remembered from Psycho, adds a chilling presence as her mother. The department store setting becomes a character in itself, a maze of reflective surfaces and empty spaces that heightens the tension. The kills are staged with creativity, but it is the unraveling of Kelly's past that gives the story its sharpest edge, culminating in revelations that set it apart from more straightforward slashers of the era. What makes The Initiation stand out is how it balances slasher thrills with family secrets and dreamlike unease. It offers blood, suspense, and a surprising emotional core, proving that even in a crowded decade of slashers, some films manage to carve their own memorable identity. The House on Sorority Row, 1983. 7 sorority sisters plan a cruel prank on their authoritarian house mother during their graduation party. The joke spirals out of control, and she collapses from a heart attack. Panicked and afraid of the consequences, the women assume she's dead, hide her body in the swimming pool, and continue the party as if nothing happened. As guests flood the house and alcohol flows, the sisters begin turning up dead, killed by someone who knows exactly what they did. Mark Rosman directs a slasher that elevates familiar ingredients through atmosphere and pacing. Catherine McNeil leads the cast with convincing guilt and mounting fear, while the rest of the ensemble is given enough personality to stand out before they're picked off. Lois Kelso Hunt leaves a strong impression as the house mother, establishing menace early despite limited screen time. The kills are inventive within the genre's limits. A bladed cane becomes the film's signature weapon, delivering sudden, vicious attacks staged with practical effects. The party setting is used effectively, music blaring, rooms crowded, murders happening just out of sight. Richard Band's score sustains tension without overpowering scenes, and the final reveal recontextualizes everything that came before with unexpected effectiveness. The House on Sorority Row isn't reinventing the slasher, but it executes the formula with care and confidence. It's tightly paced, well shot, and smart about using guilt and secrecy as fuel for horror. A strong entry in the early 80s slasher cycle, and one that rewards viewers paying attention. Killer Party, 1986. If there's one thing the rental era delivered in spades, it was slashers that couldn't decide on just one genre. Killer Party is a perfect example, starting out as a goofy campus comedy, slipping into slasher territory, and finally diving headfirst into supernatural possession. Released in 1986, it became the kind of unpredictable movie you'd rent just to see how far off the rails it would go. The story follows three college friends pledging a sorority. As part of their initiation, they're sent into an abandoned fraternity house with a dark past. What begins as a standard prank quickly spirals into bloodshed when masked killers and demonic forces join the party. The film's tone shifts constantly. One moment it's winking at the audience with frat house jokes, the next it's staging satanic rituals and grisly deaths. That uneven energy is exactly what gave Killer Party its cult reputation. Horror fans who stumbled on it during late-night screenings or spotted the tape at their local shop found a movie that felt like three different 80s trends blended into one. The fact that it never fully settles only makes it more fun for fans of offbeat horror. While it never hit the mainstream, Killer Party became a word-of-mouth rental, a chaotic, genre-bending oddity that embodied the anything-goes spirit of 80s horror. For collectors and late-night movie fans, it's one of those strange finds that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Sorority House Massacre, 1986. A college freshman named Beth moves into a sorority house, hoping for a fresh start and a sense of belonging. But almost immediately, she's plagued by nightmares and visions of brutal murders. As the weekend unfolds, her worst fears come true. A psychotic killer escapes from an asylum and heads straight for the sorority, with Beth at the center of his obsession. Directed by Carol Frank, Sorority House Massacre was often compared to Halloween for its setup, but it carves out its own place in the slasher boom of the mid-1980s. Angela O'Neill stars as Beth, while Wendy Martell, Pamela Ross, and Nicole Rio fill out the roster of sorority sisters who must fight for their lives when the killer arrives. The film balances its slasher roots with dream sequences and psychic visions, creating an eerie undertone that hints Beth's connection to the murders isn't as simple as it seems. The sorority setting provides both moments of lighthearted fun and claustrophobic terror once the stalking begins. What sets the movie apart is its place in horror history. Directed by a woman in a genre dominated by men, it approaches familiar tropes with a slightly different lens. While it never achieved the fame of bigger slashers, it became a steady VHS rental thanks to its title, its body count, and its effective mix of dreams and bloodshed. Today, Sorority House Massacre holds cult status as a straightforward but memorable entry in the slasher cycle, remembered for its blend of psychic horror and classic sorority terror. Cheerleader Camp, 1988. A cheer squad heads to a remote training camp ahead of a big competition, expecting hard practice and team bonding. Instead, someone starts picking them off one by one. The team's lead flyer begins having violent nightmares that match the real attacks, leaving her unsure whether she is sensing the danger or somehow connected to it. The mystery angle adds a small twist to the usual camp slasher setup. Suspicion shifts around the group as the numbers drop and isolation does the rest of the work. Most of the tension comes from the dream versus reality question tied to the lead character. Betsy Russell anchors the film as the troubled protagonist, with Leif Garrett appearing as her boyfriend. Familiar genre faces fill out the squad and staff, including George "Buck" Flower in a comic relief role. Performances stay in line with late 80s slasher expectations. Director John Quinn keeps things straightforward. The setting delivers cabins, woods, and practice areas that double as danger zones. Kill scenes use practical effects and standard slasher tools, with a few dream sequences adding stylized touches. A by-the-numbers late-cycle slasher with a light psychological hook. Not groundbreaking, but functional and easy to slot into an 80s camp horror lineup. If you're enjoying the video so far, take a second to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite in the comments. Now, let's keep going. Pledge Night, 1988. Paul Ziller directs this late 80s slasher that attempts to inject a supernatural, almost dream logic twist into the well-worn frat house subgenre. The story follows a group of pledges undergoing a series of increasingly humiliating and dangerous hazing rituals, only to inadvertently resurrect the vengeful spirit of a student who died during a prank decades earlier. It captures that specific transition in the horror landscape where the grounded, masked killer tropes of the early 80s were being replaced by the more flamboyant, personality-driven monsters, modeled after the success of Freddy Krueger. The film distinguishes itself through its embrace of the grotesque and the absurd, particularly in its death sequences. Rather than standard stabbings, the kills are elaborate, almost mean-spirited set pieces that utilize the college setting in creative and often nauseating ways. Anthrax lead singer Joey Belladonna provides a bizarre, high-energy presence as the antagonist, Sid, lending the film a heavy metal aesthetic that perfectly mirrors the loud, neon-soaked energy of 1988. It's a project that prioritizes cool visuals and gross-out effects over tight narrative cohesion, operating with a manic, unrefined enthusiasm. What makes this a fascinating watch today is its status as a time capsule of late 80s campus culture and the dying gasps of the original slasher boom. It manages to feel both like a mean-spirited critique of toxic fraternity rituals and a celebratory, gore-filled romp. While it lacks the suspense of the genre's masterpieces, it compensates with sheer variety and a refusal to take its premise too seriously. For those who appreciate the era's obsession with practical effects and high-concept villains, it remains a loud, messy, and thoroughly entertaining artifact of the decade's final horror output. Sorority babes in the Slimeball Bowl-O-Rama, 1988. A bunch of sorority pledges and a few tagging-along nerds break into a bowling alley for a hazing prank, only to accidentally release an impish, smart-mouthed demon from a trophy. It is a quintessential slice of the babes, blades, and bowling subgenre, leaning heavily into a neon-lit tongue-in-cheek aesthetic. Director David Decoteau prioritizes practical creature effects and campy, high-energy performances over any pretense of traditional horror structure, perfectly capturing the spirit of the late 80s direct-to-video market. The bowling alley itself, cramped, colorful, and glowing with neon, becomes the film's primary playground. By utilizing the lanes and pins as hazards, the production makes the most of its limited budget while maintaining a vibrant, slightly deranged atmosphere. Linnea Quigley anchors the cast with her veteran Scream Queen charisma, while the creature, a cynical puppet-based entity, acts as a mischievous commentator on the stupidity of the human characters, providing a layer of dark comedy that sets this apart from the era's more serious slashers. Viewers looking for prestige cinema will be disappointed, but for those who curate their collections based on discovery and that specific VHS era grit, this is a required watch. It functions as a fast-paced, unpretentious artifact of a time when horror prioritized fun and gross-out gags above all else. At its core, it is a reminder that sometimes the most memorable genre entries are the ones that are entirely comfortable being exactly what the title promises. Girls' Night Out, 1982. On crowded video store shelves in the early 80s, Girls' Night Out grabbed attention with its strange premise. A killer dressed in a giant bear mascot suit, stalking college students during an all-night scavenger hunt. It's a setup that feels both ridiculous and unsettling, the kind of oddball slasher that late-night horror fans couldn't resist renting just to see if it lived up to its bizarre hook. The film delivers the usual campus party atmosphere, cheerleaders, athletes, and plenty of red herrings. But the sight of a smiling bear mascot wielding claws as weapons gives the kills an unnerving edge. The mix of goofy setup and sudden brutality makes it feel like a movie constantly teetering between camp and genuine creepiness. Like many slashers of the era, the acting and pacing are uneven, but that unpredictability is exactly what made it a rental-era gem. For fans who thought they'd seen every masked slasher, Girls' Night Out stood out as something different. Strange, campy, and memorable, it became one of those titles horror enthusiasts would pass along by word of mouth, a cult oddity that feels perfectly at home in the era of scavenger hunts, sorority parties, and late-night discoveries. Splatter University, 1984. The film opens with a sequence that sets the tone for the entire production. A mental patient escapes from a nearby institution, murders a professor, and then vanishes into the sprawling, nondescript campus of a local college. What follows is a textbook example of the mid-80s slasher, characterized by a complete lack of ambition and a heavy reliance on the stalker in the shadows trope. It is a work of pure, unadulterated exploitation, aimed squarely at the bottom half of a drive-in double feature. Structurally, the film is a masterclass in narrative aimlessness. The plot, if you can call it that, bounces between the perspective of the killer and the various students and faculty who are destined to become his next victim. There is no central final girl dynamic or complex mythology here. The film simply moves from one kill set piece to the next, with mechanical, almost indifferent efficiency. The gore is thin, the lighting is murky, and the pacing is dictated entirely by how quickly they could move the camera from one location to another. Despite its obvious shortcomings, there is a specific melancholy allure to this kind of bottom-tier slasher. It captures the desperation of independent studios in 1984, trying to capitalize on the waning slasher craze with minimal resources and even less source material. For those who view genre history as an archaeological dig through the forgotten detritus of the 80s, Splatter University serves as an essential, if entirely hollow, time capsule of a trend that had already begun to rot from the inside out. If you love discovering forgotten horror and cult cinema, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films time forgot. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.